Hi everyone, it's a really tremendous honor to be here. I actually visited the university many times for my previous roles here, and I'm always impressed every time when I'm seeing here there is something really pioneering you guys are trying to explore, which is really exciting. So today we're going to talk a little bit about financial services and the metaverse. A little bit about myself in addition to what Eva already told you. As you can see, I was made in China. Although we don't offer buy one, get one free policies. And reinvented in the UK through education. As Iwa has already mentioned, I came to the UK in 2006 at Loughborough University. So I was very lucky to meet a group of the world's leading professors who has tell me that what the future will look like. And at that time, they said the future will be metaverse. So I decided, since I'm a happy international student, and as some of you know, we pay a lot more tuition fees than the UK students, so I consider myself as happy cash cows. So in that regard, I thought, since I'm paying slightly more than the UK students, maybe I should be a little bit more adventurous. That's why when I'm looking at what to do with my master dissertation, I really want to do something cutting edge. So I have two passions at that moment. One is about innovation. Another one is about how to help international students to have the best possible experience in UK because they're paying a lot of fees. So I was combining both of my passion because I also accidentally get myself elected the second month I arrived in this country as the first international development officer of Loughborough Student Union. So I was working very closely with the Vice Chancellor, then Professor Shirley Pierce, to champion the international strategy of the university, but with a bottom-up approach. So we try to mobilize students to be a really active part of that. So I thought, if that's the case, why not combine technology, which is metaverse at that time, together with the bottom-up approach of international strategy together. So that's what I did for my master dissertation. It was very adventurous, I was told. And I remember when I finished that, the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research, Professor Peter Goldie, was very interested in my dissertation. And so he got his PA, called me and said, we should go for lunch and talking about maybe I supervise you for a PhD. And he actually turned me down 6 months ago. But he was a little bit late because I already secured a full scholarship to study in an entirely different subject area, civil engineering, to looking at how to use digital twin in the metaverse environment to simulate more architecture, engineering, and construction industry. So I was very lucky. But the challenging bit, when you try to do something new, like the university here and our amazing colleagues try to looking at FinTech, is you do not always have people to understand what you're trying to achieve. And I face the same kind of issues as well. So at that time, I got lots of people come to me and said, Christina, how on earth did you get a full scholarship playing computer games every day? And I have to tell them it's not a computer games, it's really the next generation of the internet, which is more immersive, interactive, and intuitive. But they don't get it. So they start to give me a nickname and said, Christina, you got a permanent head damage on Metaverse, which is PhD in Metaverse. So I was a little bit frustrated, but my friend said, you shouldn't be that worried because you haven't got an MBA yet, because some people said MBA means married but still available, so you don't need to worry that much. Yeah, so never mind. And eventually some people started to call me Dr. Metaverse because they said it's so rare for someone to have a PhD on the Metaverse so early on. But I have to tell them, although I'm a big fan for Marvel superheroes, but I don't consider myself strong enough to become like a Doctor Strange. Although I don't mind fighting alongside like Chris Hemsworth or Scarlett Johansson to try to penalize Thanos. We don't want this kind of clique to have 50% of population gone. So I wouldn't mind. And of course, as I mentioned, lots of people were saying the whole metaverse thing is really a new reality. But we all know the whole thing started, as you can see, as early as 1992 by Neil Stephenson, the author of Snow Crash. So in that novel, he's talking about a virtual reality-based future society where people are wearing goggles to really interact with each other in a more immersive way. But that was 30 years ago. And the world's first Metaverse platform is called Second Life, as some of you might remember, in 2003, by a company based in San Francisco called Linden Lab. So that's actually quite a while ago. So what's happening now is we start to see Metaverse become a whole new range of technologies coming together to create a convergence, to form this next generation of the internet. So one of the questions lots of people ask me is, how do you define a metaverse? Because it's actually not one thing, it's a whole range of different things coming together. So I really like the whole framework proposed by John Radoff in building the metaverse. So you can see he's talking about 7 different layers of the metaverse, all the way from the IT infrastructure. So we're talking about 5G, 6G, semiconductor chips, like the Cambridge-based ARM company, which are very famous for chip design. And of course, we start looking at the second layer of the human interface. So we have different interface like mobile phones, smart glasses, wearables, haptics, gesture recognition, voice recognition. And if you want to be a little bit more adventurous, like Elon Musk, he really liked the idea to have a computer chips in your brain, and he called that Neuralink. And we all know actually that's hugely controversial, but recently FDA actually approved for Neuralink to start human trial. So you know, sometimes technology can be a little bit too exciting and controversial. And of course, we all love decentralization. We want to empower the people, the community to have more freedom, more voices, and more choices, especially in the banking and financial services. So a lot of things we're talking about as part of the metaverse is about how to use blockchain and AI and edge computing to decentralize the service to allow people to access finance, especially from like financial inclusion perspective. That's very important. And of course, in order to power the metaverse, we need large number of like computing power. So there's lots of like discussion about 3D engines, of course, VR, AR, mixed reality, multitask user interface, geospatial mappings, etc. And then we start to be a little bit more creative because we all love NFT and how that will enable artists and creators to really track their IP in a way which was never been able before. So we're talking a lot about asset markets and e-commerce on that layer. And of course, we'll be talking about traditional games, esports, and virtual shoppings. We all like beautiful clothes. As I mentioned, this is nothing new. And what was really interesting about Second Life, I mean, it was created in 2003 and is still ongoing at this moment. Its annual economic impact is more than $500 billion every year, quite significant. And at its peak time, it has more than 1 million active users. So not bad. What was really interesting about Second Life, some of you are probably quite interested talking about Web3. The whole idea was proposed by the co-founder of Ethereum in 2013. And can you imagine, actually, Second Life, they had quite early adoption of Web3 technology already. So at that moment, people will have a Linden dollars, which fundamentally is a stable coin. So they are linked with US dollars. If you want to consume or conduct any kind of e-commerce within the Second Life platform, you need to buy the Linden dollars first, and then you can make money there. So actually, stable coins was not only invented after the whole idea of Web3 came into being, but it was actually taking place more than 10 years ago of the whole idea, which was fascinating. And also you can see this lady over here, she was the world's first virtual millionaire. What that means, so she was selling virtual property, really high-end, beautifully designed virtual architecture within Second Life. And she made profit for more than $1 million purely from that venture. And she was hugely influential, and in 2006, she was nicknamed by CNN as a Rockefeller of Second Life. So when you're looking back, you can see history is really repeating itself in a very interesting way. we see lots of investors jump into this kind of virtual property market and doesn't really make money in the end. But that happens before in Second Life as well. So there's hypes and there are still hope. So what we're all talking about today is really the second wave of the metaverse. Started by Mark Zuckerberg. So Mark Zuckerberg, I think there is a lot of different opinion about him and Meta, but I think as a community, we actually need to say thank you to him because he actually done a really great PR campaign to get everyone, the main society, hugely interested in the idea of the metaverse by him making such major announcement to change the name from Facebook into Meta. And as a result, what happened is all the many different leading management consulting companies or banks start to evaluate the economic impact and business opportunities of the metaverse all the way to 2030. And it started with PwC. So in December 2021, shortly after the announcement from Meta, so their evaluation is the whole metaverse market size will be $1.5 trillion by 2030. And then a few months later, in April, McKinsey published the report looking at the overall economic impact at $5 trillion. And then our banking colleagues coming in here, Citigroup, they said $5 trillion, that's not enough. We believe it should be something between 8 to 13 trillion dollars. So everyone's getting really excited. What you see, as you might remember, is a large number of big giants, especially in the tech space. They're all jumping into the metaverse environments and developing their own version of application. And I think one of the most interesting one is actually the $21 billion contract signed by Microsoft to sell to the US Army to provide 10,000, I think 100,000 HoloLens mixed reality helmets for the next 10 years, which is a very big deal. And of course, like any kind of technology, it's not really going to reach its destination in one go. If you have a look here, I mean, this is a typical hype circle of Metaverse. So as you can see, starting from Snow Crash, it's going up and then sort of go down, and then in 2008, Second Life really pushed the whole thing to a new level. And this chart, at this moment, is showing that Facebook is really pushing the whole idea to a new height, and then sort of dying down. But what I noticed recently is with the announcement of Apple's new mixed reality handset, Vision Pro, I think actually that's going to push that chart even further. So I think when we're trying to looking at any kind of technology or innovation, we need to be very pragmatic and balanced. It's not going to solve all of our problems like panacea, nor it's going to destroy all of us like AI. Everyone's talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger will say, Terminator, I will be back. And so I think we need to figure out how to make a balanced approach and try to maximize the positive impact as well as minimize the risk. So is the metaverse really dead? What do people think? Dead? Not really?
Some say it was never alive.
It's a good question. My personal opinion will be it's really like Bruce Willis, Die Hard. And the reason I'm saying that is you might remember there's news of Bruce Willis. He's selling his digital identity, especially in movies, TVs, to the company because he's getting a little bit old and he has medical conditions. He can't really jumping around fighting bad people to save the world anymore. But he can sell his digital identity in those kind of movies, continue to protect the world from the evil. So I would say the metaverse is really Die Hard, maybe number 6 or number 7, can't remember the sequence. And I can give you quite a few examples why I think it's not that yet. Firstly, from the top level, if you're looking at intergovernmental bodies of the United Nations, there has been a lot of discussion since the rise of generative AI in November, which a lot of people will say they completely killed the Web3, they completely killed the metaverse, which I think is quite the opposite. It's actually going to fast track the whole development. We are going to talk about that later. But if you have a look here, so in November last year, the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism were looking at how to use metaverse to safeguard from terrorism and violent extremism. So that was in November. And here, if you're looking at Interpol, one of the world's like leading authority on police force, they created the world's first metaverse for police officers and try to looking at how to keep our environment safe. And I had a really fascinating discussion with Interpol about how we can ensure the metaverse will be safe when it comes to dark web as well as deep web. So some of you probably heard that for the World Wide Web, we are normally talking about, it's normally referred to the 5% of the clean web, which are indexed and we can search that on a daily basis. The rest, 95%, is called deep web. They're not really indexed, it's not very easy to access. And among them, there's another 5% of the dark web, which is full of criminal activities. So when we're talking a lot about online safety, cybersecurity, most discussion is focusing on the 5% of the clean web. So if we are saying the whole metaverse is going to be the next generation of the internet, it's going to be an evolution. So we shouldn't only focusing on the 5%, because the rest, 95%, will evolving as well. So I asked that question to Interpol. They can't really answer it. Yeah, because it's quite challenging. But I think it's better to ask challenging questions and realize there are things we need to address rather than pretend everything's fine. So I think it's quite important. And also, we all know that a really important part about metaverse and any kind of innovation, intellectual property rights is crucial to really incentivize people to move forward. So the World Intellectual Property Organization organized a high-level summit in Geneva in March this year, looking at IP and the metaverse. And I was very lucky to be invited to chair their opening panel discussion and set out the scene for the 2-day high-level discussion involving more than 100+ member states, looking at how to legislate IP within the metaverse. And of course, there is another really important organization under the UN, which is called the International Telecommunication Union. So they are the ICT agency of the UN. They set out a lot of international technical standards of different technology around cybersecurity, AI, mixed reality, etc. So they have set up a dedicated working group looking at how to please and also support a better standard of metaverse moving forward. And I was very lucky to be appointed as vice chairman for their working group on metaverse with a special focus on sustainability, accessibility, and inclusion. And of course, metaverse is not only about IP and technical standard. It's about education, the future of work and skills. So UNESCO are also working on the metaverse. So they organized a series of webinars looking at how metaverse can be used to empower educators to support our training and study needs of the future. As you can see over there, I was there as well, that one in red. So that's on the intergovernmental level. If we're looking at country level, more and more countries are actually jumping into this space, which is quite fascinating. Of course, you have the early adopter, like UAE. In Dubai, the Royal Crown Prince initiates the metaverse strategy, and they're really looking at how to create 40,000 more jobs in the metaverse economy. And also, another really interesting area is in South Korea. So last January, is their Minister for Technology who are looking at how to put the metaverse as part of their digital future. So very prominent, they're putting nearly $200 million. And China is huge on metaverse. You'll be surprised. For example, Shanghai, just one city alone, they plan to cultivate $52 billion metaverse economy in the next 3 years, just one city. And if you're having a look for different part of China, pretty much I would say there are at least 20 different municipal governments. they have put the Metaverse as their next 5-year plan as the wider digital strategy of the country moving forward, which are very prominent. And of course, Japan, if you like cartoons, animations, you know Japan is really strong for this kind of culture industry. So it was launched by the Japanese Prime Minister to looking at how to use Metaverse combined with their very strong export of cultural industry on global scale. So that's quite cool. And of course, within Europe, we are doing a lot public consultation by European Commission looking at how to create a more human-centered Metaverse strategy in the future. I can give you a few more examples about how different industries are actually having quite tangible results from Metaverse, because we all know financial services is like the blood running through all different sectors of our society. And when there are different sectors who are really using Metaverse or Web3 related technology at scale, it means opportunities to us. So for example, one of the most successful application of the Metaverse is actually Microsoft Flight Simulator. It has been in existence for more than 40 years and it trained more than 10 million people. So they have flight more than 500 million times over 40 years, and the distance is about 40 billion miles. That's the equivalent of 10 million trips around the Earth. And if you are like Elon Musk, very into space, like exploration, we're talking about 200 round trips from the Earth to the Sun. So that's quite significant. Another area is actually being used in defense military purpose. And as you can see, unlike Meta, the US Army has been working on the Metaverse related military training since 2017. And they have a special term for it. It's called synthetic training environment. So that's their version of the Metaverse. That has been ongoing for many, many years. And in Cambridge, in 2012, there is a company called Improbable. Some of you probably heard about it. It's quite a big player. So far, they have secured more than $600 million investment. So it's basically a unicorn. What they do is a big portion of their business is provide military trainings for defense purpose for different armies worldwide. And they have headquarters in London, Washington, DC, employ more than 1,000 people worldwide. And about 20% of them are dedicated defense experts. So they are really solid in what they are doing. This is one of my favorite examples. Every time when I talk about it, I feel really, really inspired. So there is a Brazilian twins who are 3 years old, and they have a very special medical condition. So when they were born, their head actually are linked together. So I'm sure many of you here, you got your children, and as a parents, you want to give the best you can for your children. But for these parents, they are really, really worried. How can they ensure their lovely baby can survive? They tried many different medical procedures, but all failed. So in the end, they turned to a London-based surgeon and say, is there anything else you can do to help us? And the surgeon said, I have something maybe slightly unconventional and risky. Do you want to have a try? They have no other choice. So they agreed. So basically what the surgeon did was really remarkable. So in order to maximize the survival and success rates of this procedure, he has been working with more than 100 medical staff, both in London and Brazil. And they input all the critical medical information of the twin in the computer, and they created a virtual hospital operation room. So everyone is wearing VR goggles, and they have been training and developing different scenarios on how to perform the procedures. About 3-6 months time before they actually did the procedure, develop different scenarios and ensure how to help the twins to survive. So in August last year, 27 hours of operation, 7 surgeries, and involving staff, both in London and Brazil, they managed to successfully separate the twins. But what was really remarkable is the operation is conducted by the medical doctor in Brazil with the guidance of the surgeon in London. And remotely, they are meeting in the same virtual metaverse platform to collaborate. So that's probably one of the world's most challenging medical surgery ever, and it succeeds. So imagine in the future if we can use metaverse to apply for nursing training, especially consider the very aging society we are all facing worldwide. That would be hugely powerful, and of course there will be lots of quite challenging procedures. It can save tens of millions of people's lives. That's really amazing. And also we are very lucky to working with different governments worldwide to looking at human-centered metaverse strategy. So we recently launched one with Tampere, based in Finland. So some of you, if you still remember Nokia, so Nokia have a very big presence in Tampere, and also their first female prime minister went to university in Tampere. So we were looking at how to develop a technology, digital future of 2040, where we can really ensure the needs and the well-being of humans is put at the very center, especially consider the rise of AI. Let's talk about banking. There are also a lot of really important applications. I think the financial services can really use metaverse to explore. So I'll give you a few high-level insights. For example, how we tokenize different assets is a hugely fascinating topic lots of financial services are looking at. And another area is really to looking at building the bridge between different digital currency. But of course, this side is quite controversial because for the Web3 community, they don't really like anything that's centralized, like central bank digital currency. But central banks, they all love it. They want control, they want to ensure everything is compliant, and there is no issue about money laundering, etc., and the protection of consumers, etc. So that's an ongoing debate. And of course, how we can create more marketplace for digital assets of the future, that's quite interesting. And of course, there are lots of banks, financial services looking at marketing PR opportunities using different metaverse platforms to showcase they are in rather than out, because they feel a little bit worried. They don't want to be considered as they are not forward-thinking enough, so they need to do something when something really popular coming in. And of course, there are a lot of really interesting things in insurance. I think there is actually huge opportunities for insurance, because imagine all these kind of amazing digital assets that will be created throughout the whole process. Once you lost your digital wallet, that's definitely not something you will be happy about. So I think insurance of any kind of digital assets will have massive commercial values in the years to come, and it's already starting. So I just want to give you a few quick examples of different financial services, what they have been doing. As I mentioned, actually at this moment, I would say worldwide, there are a huge number of financial services jumping into the space. And as I mentioned, a lot of them are looking at how to insure digital assets. And another area is looking at they buying virtual land, try to set up their virtual presence to engage with clients. And of course, there are different banks or financial institutions using metaverse for training purpose. So for example, here you can see actually Bank of America has been using metaverse to train more than 4,000 their branches worldwide in terms of emergencies or daily operation, how to optimize the whole procedures. And there are lots of banks based in South Korea. We all know they are very advanced when it comes to digital. So they are looking at whether or not they can use different elements within the metaverse environment to provide better customer service. I remember we got colleagues from HSBC here today, right? Yeah, And HSBC is doing a lot of really interesting stuff within the metaverse environment. For example, your Asia Pacific areas are focusing on how to use metaverse to provide more personalized service to high net worth individuals through their private banking division. So there are lots of things going on, and even banks in Kuwait and central bank in India, they are all looking at how to create a bridge between central bank digital currencies and decentralized cryptos. The way forward. This is controversial. And it's also quite recent developments is I was slightly surprised when I see the news that Binance and Coinbase were actually sued by SEC. So I think the reaction from different stakeholders involved seems to be very interesting. And when this happens, I was at a conference in Finland. I was sitting next to one of the leading authority in the Middle East on blockchain. And so he was saying that this probably will make the Middle East and other part of the world who are crypto friendly, they will have more investment pouring in. And this is actually happening. I remember a few days ago at the opening ceremony of London Tech Week, we all see that Rishi Sunak was very happy announcing that one of the US-based venture capital fund who specialize in blockchain and Web3, they decided to move to the UK as a result. And of course, we see the latest news that Binance is going to fight back against SEC. Fingers crossed, best luck. And so things are going down very, very quickly. So my personal feeling is unless every single government in the world ban Web3 or crypto, it's not going to stop. So as long as there is one or even a group of companies or countries who are still open for crypto or blockchain or Web3, it's going to survive. That's my personal opinion. Generative AI, that's another fascinating area I really love. This chart is actually produced by Sequoia Capital, one of the famous VC funds. So the generative AI is a really interesting thing. Actually, we all know AI has been there for many, many decades. And it has at least two different winters because it's the same theory. People put too much expectation into the technology and hope it can solve all our problems. And in the end, it doesn't develop quickly enough. So we have the first winter. And what happened, you might remember, is the UK government paused all fundings to AI for 7 years. So no one get any money for those 7 years. And then sort of come back again. And then again, other governments are talking about this area is huge investment, but it doesn't produce tangible results. So we had the second AI winter. So again, go back to what I have talked about before. Any kind of cutting edge technology, it needs time to educate the population to really gain the traction. Yeah, but what was really interesting about this chart is generative AI started with you give a prompt, say, help me to write an article about Metaverse, it will give you a lot of really useful information in seconds. So that's text to text. And now we start to talk about code, image, speech, video, and then 3D objects. What that means, let's have a look quickly. There are two really interesting examples here. One is produced by Google in October last year called Dream Fusion. What that means is, for example, if I use this platform and I will put in the words, give me a squirrel, and then in about 1 hour, 30 minutes, it will generate a 3D version of the squirrel with low resolution, which is quite cool because previously that was never possible. But what was even more interesting is only 3 months later, in January this year, NVIDIA came up with the Magic 3D. So compare the previous version of Google, you're doing the same with a text prompt. It gives you a higher resolution 3D object. And that's only taking 40 minutes, half of the time. That's 3 months. And then I remember This one, you probably see this news lately. I think that was like taking place 1 week or 2 weeks ago. So basically, NVIDIA now have its Omniverse Avatar Cloud engine to have a new app. Basically will allow you to use like AI, generative AI, to provide non-player character to listen and to respond to each of the different game players in a unique way. That almost feels like Western world, you know, where you have really personalized like player experience, which again never happens before. And this was actually, I think it was last week. Yeah. So now what they can do is you're putting a 2D video and using NVIDIA, it can allow you to use generative AI to create an immersive 3D environment in less than 1 hour. It's completely mad. So my prediction is within the next 1 year or two, what will happen is using text and generative AI, we can have a text to digital twin or text to metaverse. That's going to be massive, and it's going to be cheaper, faster, and easier. Any one of us here today, we can do that quickly in a way which never happens before. Another thing, we're always talking about user interface. I really love VR, but I don't know if you have the same kind of situation. If I wear any VR goggles for more than 30 minutes, I start to have headache, I start to feel like really sick. It's just not very comfortable, and I don't think I can wear it 24/7 because it's not intuitive enough. So that's one of the biggest issue for mass adoption of Metaverse or Web3. And then what we see recently is really interesting with Apple announcing the new mixed reality headset. And what was really interesting is they didn't mention anything about Metaverse because they feel Metaverse is more like a PR campaign by Meta. So they call it is the world's first spatial computing operating system. And they have the first 3D cameras and a little bit pricey, nearly 3,500 US dollars. And what was really interesting about this announcement is, before this announcement, everyone is saying Metaverse is dead. And now everyone is saying Metaverse is alive again. So that goes back to my joke previously about Bruce Willis. It's really die hard. And this product is really groundbreaking because it has more than 5,000 patents, 23 million pixels for each of your eyes, more than 4K. It's quite immersive. And also it has a really interesting eye tracking system to really monitor, you know, where you're looking at. It will create more immersive like experience for you. And you don't need any mobile phones. You are using your fingers to really like interact, which are really cool. So their plans is using this first spatial computer operating system to replace monitors and TV screens in the very short future. Another thing, as we have mentioned about the metaverse, in order to unleash its true potential, Intel gave a statement 2 years ago. We need at least another 1,000 times computing power to unleash its full potential, but we currently don't have that. So how can we solve that issue? Quantum computing. Some of you might remember in 2019, Google made a major announcement and saying they have achieved quantum supremacy. What that means is they have developed a quantum computer which can run 158 million times faster than any existing supercomputer. Just to give you an idea, for example, if they want to run a complicated calculation, which will normally take 10,000 years to complete, now with this 4 minutes, it's completely mad. And then what got me really excited was last year when the Nobel Prize winner for physics was given to 3 top scientists who are working on quantum entanglement. Do we have any people here specialized in physics? Not really. Just to give you a very easy definition. What does content entanglement mean? Normally the computer, it will run on a binary system, so 0, 1, 0, 1. And with content entanglement, it will allow the parcel to synchronize in between 0 and 1. It can be like in 3-dimensional up and forward, side, and down, but it can be like 360 degree. That gives unlimited potential for the computing power to grow exponentially. So that's massively powerful. And then in October, a few months later, Joe Biden visited one of the world's largest quantum computing research center in IBM, and highly recommended their $20 billion investments in quantum-related technology, and saying that this is going to help America to play a leading role in the world for quantum computing, which is quite cool. And this gentleman, he is the current CEO and chairman of IBM. So he gave a speech in World Economic Forum early this year. So when people asking him, how far away can we use quantum computing? And he said, maybe for some basic model, we can start to have that commercialized in 2025. But one of the latest example I have seen is by a company based in Spain called Metaverse Computing. Check it out. They are doing something really, really fascinating. So they have been given a major contract by Bosch to use quantum computing to simulate more than 300 factories involving 10,000 workers to create a quantum-powered digital twin to simulate the whole logistic chain and operation. And they started that in August last year, and I talked to their head of R&D. She told me that the results is quite significant when it comes to cost reduction and improved efficiency. So it's actually coming quite quickly. This is quite an interesting point. Environment impact. I remember when I told my master dissertation supervisor, a world-leading expert on new media, said that I'm working on Metaverse now again after 16 years. His immediate reaction is, it's not environmentally friendly, which is true, unfortunately, because actually when you try to simulate large amounts of virtual world which are constantly in existence, 360 degree with hundreds or even more people involved, you need very powerful data center to do that. And even if, let's say, we can have all of the data center use renewable energy, that's still a large amount of energy consumed every day, where we're still having the Ukraine-Russian war, so energy crisis is not quite yet over. So how can we really provide a solution? There are quite a few interesting cases. So the European Commission put in $150 million to create a digital twin of the Earth. So they have the world's top scientists doing different simulation on the digital Earth to looking at how to prevent extreme weather taking place in different parts of Europe. That has been proved very efficient. Similarly, there is Earth 2 developed by NVIDIA. They are also working with the world top scientists, and especially they are using machine learning, which can be 100,000 times faster to process all the data and provide the best recommendations for policy scientists worldwide on fighting climate change. So this solution is already in place. This one is my favorite. Last year, there was a major news breakout in the United States talking about how nuclear fusion can really help us to address climate change. And in February this year, there is an article published by Nature Communication to talk about a group of leading scientists in both Japan and the US. They have refined the breakout from last year, looking at how to develop non-radioactive nuclear fusion, which can produce carbon emission-free electricity, which is incredible. And they estimate that if they can produce tangible results which are scalable, the impact will be using this new mechanism, they can power the whole planet for another 100,000 years, carbon-free, which is amazing. But the issue is, they said the earliest time they can get that sorted will be 2030. So between now and 2030, we probably need to figure out other ways to really address the environment issue. So basically, that's what we do at the Metaverse Institute. So we work very closely with United Nations, governments, investors, corporate, looking at how to identify the most efficient business models to achieve commercial success. But also at the same time, I feel very passionate about anything to do with positive impact, because we can make all the money in the world and be a happy billionaire lying on the beach, drink cocktail, but if our environment is not sustainable anymore, nothing makes sense, because we all want ourselves, our children, our future generation to enjoy the same kind of happy, healthy life we're enjoying now. So I want to conclude my speech by quoting Robert Murdoch's quote. He said, "The world is changing very fast. Big will not beat small anymore. It will be the fast beating the slow." So do you want to be the fast, or do you want to be the big one? I think that would be an interesting question. So thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah, the gentleman over there.
Thank you for a fantastic vision, a fantastic talk. You talked about making the metaverse human-friendly.
Yeah.
And putting humanity at the centre.
Yeah.
Would you expand on that for us, please? What does that mean?
Well, the reason I'm saying that is because I am seriously worried about the singularity issues, as discussed by Dr. Geoffrey Hinton, when his sensational resignation from Google really shocked the whole world. And it's interesting you asked that. I mean, I was having a debate with the global head of AI of NVIDIA in Saudi Arabia in March at a conference. So I was asking him that according to some predictions of like top scholars in the world, they believe that maybe by 2030 is the year we will have an issue about singularity when the intelligence of machine exceeds the intelligence of human. So are we prepared for that? Perhaps not. And also, I remember when Dr. Geoffrey Hinton resigned, he lists top 3 concerns he had about AI. And one reason is about I can't really pronounce that word, but basically it's threat to our existence. And the second is fake news. What's really interesting is in November last year, at the very starting point of generative AI creating so much excitement, the Chinese government put forward a legislation very quickly. They mandate all the platforms who have users using generative AI to watermark all the content created by generative AI. And I see all the other governments, including the UK government, start looking at that as a potential effective ways to regulate and ensure authenticity of the news. But my personal concern is within 1 year or 2, we are going to see that the potential percentage of content generated by generative AI will be significantly higher than the human created content. Let's say if it's 90% and human will be 10%. And then when that comes, does that mean all the governments will mandate the platform to watermark all the content created by humans? That's quite an interesting thing to debate. And I don't think they were even thinking about that far yet. So that's his second concern. And the third concern is about massive unemployment, which I think are already happening. But what was really interesting is a lot of us, when we turn back our time and say 10 years ago, we know this is coming. And the World Economic Forum had a report saying in the next 5-6 years, we need to upskill at least 1 billion population worldwide. But what we were not expecting is we thought AI will replacing all the low-level, labor-driven skills jobs. But what we start to see is they are also start to replacing highly educated, very sophisticated jobs, say coding. Yeah, because in the past, if you become a coder, you're really good at programming, it's almost guaranteed that you can have an easy, scalable, like exit, become a happy billionaire very quickly. But no, AI is doing much better when it comes to coding. And I see news in Hollywood, there are lots of playwrights, they start to go on strike because the movie companies, movie producers, they want to use AI to replace all the storytellers. That's what we call creative part. AI is replacing that. Yeah. And also I was in ACCA yesterday talking to one of their senior leaders. They are also quite worried how that's going to impact on professional services, whether it's lawyers or it's accountant, and even some of the banking, especially for personalized financial advisors. We already see quite a few platforms using AI to automate that process. So what's left for the rest of us? There are a few options. One option is we will have more free time to enjoy quality life with our family, our children, and pursue things we are really interested. That will be good. And the second thing is, in places where the digital divide, especially the wealth gap, is so high, when we have people who already have sufficient funds to maintain a decent life, how do we ensure people who hasn't got that opportunity do not left behind? Because if they are left behind, they won't be happy. Yeah. We will have riots, we are going to have lots of crimes. So we need to get that sorted. In some part of the world, they start looking at universal basic income. Finland is one of the pioneers in that space, but the issue they are facing is it makes people happy, but it doesn't lead to more jobs. So what I was thinking is maybe we need something similar to the New Deal championed by President Franklin Roosevelt during the Great Depression, but cater to our new world in the more digitalized, like AI impact, new economy. We need a new, maybe AI, Metaverse New Deal to ensure people have things they can enjoy doing so they don't feel that they have no confidence, they have no future, they have no hope, and they become really unhappy.
Yeah. Can I just say, I'm really glad you pointed to that. There's the apocalypse, the takeover of the machines stuff, which is speculation. Yeah. About something well down the jobs apocalypse. Yeah. Apocalypse upon us. Can I just say to you, as someone who's very influential in those circles, I don't see yet any initiatives to produce the policies to deal with that by the introduction of retraining, massive opportunities to retrain in the metaverse, and so on, and things like UBI. For government, maybe that's something that could form part of the initiative you were just talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the job issues is really quite imminent now. I would say now, literally. And how can we really secure our jobs, especially consider a lot of us has mortgage, have very expensive fee for the children to go to nursery or boarding schools, etc. How can we ensure that's properly managed? And I guess in the future, entrepreneurship education will be started and maybe mandated when your children go to nursery, because if they have the idea to have enough financial literacy from a very early stage and really set up their own company to achieve financial freedom, and then they don't need to worry too much. But if not, they are going to struggle for their lifetime, which is not something we want to see. Yeah. Pleasure. The gentleman over there.
Yeah, so thank you very much, very interesting talk about Metaverse. So I have two simple questions, if you can just address. I understand there are a lot of hype around Metaverse now. It's still earlier stage, right? So my first question is, do you personally think that Metaverse would be disruptive to existing traditional businesses and how? And second question would be, is it creating new markets or new business models, and then how?
I think when we have any kind of like new technology coming to play, it always have impact. And the impact will be both positive and negative at the same time. So I guess for the metaverse, if we just use the recent launch of Apple's like new mixed reality handset, what's going to happen, I predict, is all the other big players will probably do something similar. And it will drive the price down very quickly. Maybe within 1 year, it will be half the price or even 1/3 of the price they're offering, and then start to become really affordable for the general public, and they will all start to buy it. And then during this process, the ecosystem building of related like supply chains is going to be huge investment opportunity. If you have a look on the share price of Unity, which are partnering with Apple to create this new spatial computing operating system, what happened is as soon as they make that announcement, their share price increased by more than 20% in 1 day. And they say that's the highest increase since their IPO, which is crazy. So I guess a lot of more like small, medium-sized enterprise startup will start to flourish around that kind of area. So for financial services, how you capture those like fast-growing like communities is quite crucial. I was at Google last week, and what was really interesting, because we all know they are like one of the top 5 tech giants, and they launched their first Web3 community to try to target that kind of like startup like areas for their future growth on cloud service. So if very big player, they are jumping into the space, and the financial service, we are not moving quickly enough, not because we don't want to, but a lot of times because of regulation on the financial service are so tight, it's very difficult for you to be really agile. Because I mean, I was working in the parliament like 10 years ago. I remember one of the things we were working on is the regulatory framework for the financial services. So I remember having the chairman of HSBC, Barclays, Lloyd, all coming over to the parliament, being grilled by different parliamentarians about how we can prevent another financial crunch that take place in 2008. So we can be a little bit tight, but I guess maybe one thing we can start to do is follow new business model. Maybe we can having better M&A strategy and having your own like VC, you know, like corporate VC function, which I think a lot of like business already start to do, because that's really helping you to like manage the risk in a way which is not previously possible before. And of course, we have the HSBC Innovation Banking, which was launched by Rishi Sunak in response to the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. So there will be lots of opportunities, and it's about how we identify that and then try to be compliant and at the same time chip in quickly. Yeah, the lady here.
Sorry, I'm going to I was just wondering if we could take the conversation and the questions maybe elsewhere, because I'm very conscious that we're running out of time. The camera crew would have to set up the other room that we're using for this. But I hope that you're going to continue the conversations and the questions beyond this room. And please, that goes for everybody as well. But without further ado, we'd just like to really thank you for that very insightful keynote speech. There's a lot to take away.